My parents sold my car while I was out of town for work. Not borrowed it, not scratched it in a parking lot, and hoped I wouldn't notice. Sold it $11,500 cash, gone to cover my brother's gambling debt before the wrong people came collecting. When I found out, my mom looked me dead in the eye and said, "We did what we had to do. Jake needed us." I smiled. She asked why I was smiling. I told her she'd find out soon enough. What my parents didn't know, what none of them knew, is that I had transferred the title to my LLC 8 months earlier. That sale was never legal, and the man who bought it was about to find that out in the worst way possible. Let me back up. I was 29 when this happened. I'd been living on my own since I was 22, working as a medical billing specialist for a hospital group in Charlotte. Not glamorous, not the kind of job people write movies about, but I was good at it, and it paid well enough that I'd managed to save a real amount of money over the years, buy a decent used car outright, and build something I was genuinely proud of. My parents still lived in the same house I grew up in, about 40 minutes outside the city. My brother Jake was 32, unemployed more often than employed, and had been living with them again for the past year after his second eviction in 3 years. This is relevant. It's always relevant when it comes to Jake. Growing up, Jake was the one my parents poured everything into. My dad coached his little league teams, drove 4 hours every weekend to watch him play travel baseball through middle school, bought him the best equipment money could buy. When Jake wanted a gaming setup at 16, they financed one. When he crashed his first car at 19, they bought him another one. When he got fired from a job at 24 because he stopped showing up, my dad called the manager personally to ask for a second chance on his behalf. I was 2 years younger. When I wanted to join the school newspaper, my mom said it would distract me from studying. When I got into the honors program at my high school, nobody took pictures. When I graduated college with zero debt because I'd worked nights through all 4 years and earned 2 scholarships, my parents took me to Applebee's, and my dad spent most of dinner talking about Jake's new job at a landscaping company. He lasted 6 weeks at that job. Every time I pointed out the imbalance, I got the same answer. "You're so independent, sweetheart. You don't need us the way Jake does." As if needing less made me worth less. As if being capable meant I'd forfeited the right to be supported. I stopped saying anything after a while. I just watched, and I learned, and I started making quiet decisions about what I would and wouldn't trust them with. The job opportunity came up fast. A hospital network in Seattle needed someone for a 3-week on-site audit. Good pay, all expenses covered, and it would look excellent on my record. I said yes without hesitating. The only problem was my car. I lived in an apartment complex with assigned parking, and I didn't love the idea of leaving my car in the lot unattended for 3 weeks. I'd had a side mirror clipped off the previous spring by someone who didn't leave a note. I asked a coworker, but she was also traveling. I asked my neighbor, but she already had 2 cars. My mom called the same week, which felt like timing. She said she and my dad would love to see me before I left. And oh, by the way, if I needed a place to leave the car, I could park it in their driveway. They'd keep an eye on it. I want to be honest here. I didn't fully trust them, but I also didn't have a better option that week. And the part of me that still wanted to believe the best about my parents overruled the part that knew better. I told myself it was just a car sitting in a driveway. What could go wrong? What I didn't tell anyone, not my mom, not my dad, not my brother, was that 3 months earlier, I'd set up a single-member LLC for some freelance consulting work I'd started doing on weekends. And as part of getting my finances in order, my accountant had suggested I transfer my car title to the LLC for liability and tax reasons. I'd done it. The title to my car no longer had my name on it. It had the name of my company. I didn't think about it much when I handed my parents the spare key. I just said, "Don't drive it, please. Just let it sit." My mom smiled and said, "Of course." My dad nodded like it was nothing. Jake was in the backyard pretending to weed the garden. He didn't come in to say goodbye. I flew to Seattle on a Sunday. By the following Thursday, I had no idea anything was wrong. It was a Tuesday night, 11 days into the trip, when I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "Hey, I bought a silver Accord from your family last week, trying to reach you about paperwork." I read it 3 times. I called the number. The man who answered sounded tired and a little nervous. He explained that he'd responded to a listing my parents had posted online for a used Honda Accord, silver, 2019, $11,500 cash. He'd driven out, test drove it, liked it, paid in cash, and taken the key. But when he went to transfer the title, he hit a wall. The name on the title didn't match the seller's. The DMV flagged it. His own mechanic, who was helping him with the paperwork, told him the sale might not be valid. I sat on the edge of my hotel bed and stared at the wall. I thanked him. I told him I needed to look into this and I'd be in touch within 24 hours. I told him, clearly and carefully, not to do anything else with the title yet. Then I called my mom. She picked up on the second ring. "Hi, honey, how's Seattle?" "You sold my car," I said. Silence. The kind that isn't surprised, just caught. "It was an emergency," she said. "Jake owed money to some people, and it got serious. We didn't have any other choice." "You sold my car," I said again. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't crying. I just needed her to hear the sentence without any decoration around it. "You were gone," she said. "We knew you had savings. You can get another car. Jake could have gotten hurt. You didn't ask me. You would have said no." "Yes," I said. "I would have." There was a pause. Then she said, "You're being selfish. Your brother is family." I almost laughed. There it was, right on schedule. The word selfish, aimed at me, for the thing they did to me. I'd heard that word my entire life pointed in my direction, and I'd spent years wondering if it was true, wondering if there was something wrong with me that I wanted to be treated fairly. Sitting in a hotel room in Seattle, I realized I wasn't wondering anymore. "How much did Jake owe?" I asked. $9,000. "And you sold my car for $11,500. She hesitated. "The rest covered some of what your dad and I had spent helping him." "My car. They sold my car, kept the profit above Jake's debt, and used it for themselves." "Okay," I said. "Okay?" She sounded surprised. "I'll call you back," I said, and hung up. I sat there for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and called my accountant. "Here's the thing about selling a car that has a business title. The seller needs authorization from the registered entity, meaning the LLC, to complete the transfer. My parents had no authorization. They had no knowledge the title existed under a different name. They'd sold a car they had no legal right to sell, to a man who now had a key and a vehicle but no valid title and no path to registration. The sale was void. My accountant walked me through the options. I could file a police report immediately, which would trigger a stolen vehicle investigation. I could contact the buyer and work out a return. I could also consult an attorney about civil options against my parents. I told him I needed to think overnight. He said to call back in the morning. I didn't sleep much. I lay in the dark of that hotel room and let myself feel everything I'd been pressing down for years. The baseball equipment and the art classes I never got to take. The graduation dinner, where nobody asked about my plans. The spare key handed over with a smile, a promise, and zero intention of keeping it. Every time I'd been told I was fine because I didn't need as much. Every time Jake had cost them something and they'd looked my direction to quietly absorb the difference. I thought about the man who'd bought my car in good faith, cash in hand, no idea he'd just walked into my family's mess. He didn't deserve this. That wasn't complicated. I called him the next morning before I called anyone else. I explained the situation plainly, not all of it, just the relevant part. The title was in my LLC's name. My family had listed and sold the vehicle without authorization. The sale was legally void. I was not going to let him take the fall for that. I told him I was flying home in 10 days and I would handle it directly. I told him I would make sure he got his $11,500 back in full, and I would deal with my family separately. He was quiet for a moment and then said, "I'm sorry you're going through this." I told him I was sorry he'd gotten pulled into it. After I hung up, I called my mom back. "The man who bought my car can't register it," I said. "The title is in my company's name. The sale is void. He needs his money back." Dead silence. "What do you mean your company's name?" My dad's voice came through. He'd been listening on speaker. "I transferred the title months ago. You didn't know because I didn't tell you. You sold something you had no legal right to sell." My mom's voice cracked. "What are we supposed to do?" "Give him back his money." "We don't have it," she said. "The $9,000 went to Jake's debt. The rest?" "I know where the rest went," I said. My dad tried next. His voice shifted into the tone he used when he was trying to sound reasonable. Listen, this is a complicated situation. We made a mistake, but what's done is done. The important thing is, Jake is safe, and we handle this as a family. You're right that it's a family matter, I said, which is why I'll be handling it. What does that mean? It means I'm flying home in 10 days. I'd suggest figuring out where that money is coming from before I land. I hung up. Over the next week, my phone filled up. My mom, my dad, Jake, which almost broke me just from the surprise of it. He never called me. He called me 4 times in 3 days. I let them ring. On day 8, I called my attorney, a woman I'd used once before for a lease dispute. I explained everything. She confirmed what my accountant had said and walked me through the process. She also said gently but clearly that if my parents were unable to return the funds to the buyer, I could pursue them civilly, and that depending on how the facts were framed, the original transaction could be characterized as fraud. I told her I hoped it wouldn't come to that. She said she hoped so too, but to keep her number handy. I landed on a Friday night. I didn't go to my parents' house. I went home, unpacked, slept in my own bed, and called the buyer the next morning to let him know I was back. On Saturday afternoon, I drove to my parents' house alone. My dad opened the door. He looked older than he had 3 weeks ago, which I hadn't thought was possible. My mom was at the kitchen table. Jake was in the living room, pretending to watch television. Nobody offered me anything to drink. My mom spoke first. "We need you to understand." "Where's the money?" I said. My dad sat down heavily. "We've been working on it. We talked to the bank about a home equity line. They said it could take, how long? A few weeks, maybe a month." "The buyer is not going to wait a month," I said. "He's already talked to an attorney, Jake, from the other room. So talk him down, offer him a deal." I looked at my brother. He was staring at the television. He didn't look at me. "He paid cash in good faith," I said. "There's nothing to deal." "You're making this harder than it has to be," Jake said. He still didn't look at me. That was the moment something inside me got very quiet and very clear. Not angry, not hurt, just certain. "I'm going to cover the buyer's refund," I said, "out of my savings. He's innocent, and I'm not going to let him wait on your timeline." My mom's shoulders dropped with relief. "Thank you. We'll pay you back as soon." "You'll pay me back with interest, in writing. With a repayment schedule I have my attorney draft. If you miss a payment, I pursue a lien on the house." The room went still. My dad's jaw tightened. "You'd put a lien on our house? Your family home?" "You sold my car," I said. "You used the extra money on yourselves. Your son's gambling debt is not my emergency. But I will not leave an innocent man holding the bag, so I'll cover it. And you will pay me back like the legal debt this is." My mom started to cry. "How can you be so cold?" I looked at her for a long time. "I've watched you spend 30 years giving Jake everything and telling me I was fine because I didn't need as much. I am fine. I built that myself. But fine doesn't mean free. You still owe me." She was still crying. My dad was staring at the floor. Jake had turned the television off. "I'll have my attorney send the paperwork by Wednesday," I said. "Please have it signed and back to her by Friday." I left. In the parking lot, I sat in the rental I'd been driving since I got back and let myself shake a little. Not from fear, from the strange physical release of saying things you've been swallowing for years. My hands weren't steady, but my mind was. That was the important part. I transferred the refund to the buyer that same evening. He responded within an hour. "Thank you. I'm so sorry your family put you in this position." I told him it wasn't his fault, and I hoped he found a car he loved. He told me I was a class act. I didn't feel like a class act. I felt tired. But I was done letting tired be a reason to stay quiet. The paperwork went back and forth with minimal drama. My parents signed. My attorney noted that my dad had read every line twice, which she'd said was a good sign that they understood the stakes. For about 3 weeks, things were quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like a held breath. Then, my aunt texted me. She's my mom's sister, and she has a talent for getting involved in things she's been given a partial version of. Her message said, "I heard what happened with the car. Your parents are devastated. Your brother is ashamed. Don't you think it's time to be the bigger person?" I stared at that text for a long time. I knew what this was. My mom had gotten on the phone and given her side of the story, the version where they'd made a mistake out of desperation, where I was being unforgiving, where the legal paperwork was an act of cruelty rather than the only logical consequence of a theft. My aunt was the first scout. More would follow. They did. A cousin sent me a Facebook message about forgiveness. Another relative texted my dad's side of things. Something about family being more important than money. A woman who I hadn't spoken to since a Christmas gathering 4 years ago sent me a long message about how she'd been estranged from her own sister and always regretted it. I read all of them. I didn't respond to any of them. And then, 2 weeks after the text started, my mom posted something in the family group chat. It was long, a paragraph that started with, "I know we made a mistake," and ended with, "But sometimes families have to make hard choices for the people they love, and I hope one day she understands that." There was no name, but everyone in the chat knew who she meant. I thought about staying quiet. I'd stayed quiet my whole life, and it had gotten me exactly here. A sold car, a family group chat full of people who had one side of the story, and a mother who could reframe theft as sacrifice without blinking. So I typed, "Since this has come up publicly, I'll share the full picture. While I was on a work trip, my parents sold my car, a car with a title in my LLC's name, without my knowledge or consent, to cover my brother's gambling debt. The sale was legally void. The buyer, who had nothing to do with any of this, was left without a valid title or the ability to register the vehicle. I covered his refund out of my own savings. My parents have signed a legal repayment agreement. That's the whole story. I'm not angry. I'm not estranged. I simply required the same accountability from my family that I would require from anyone else who sold my property without permission." I hit send. I put my phone face down and made dinner. When I picked it back up 40 minutes later, the chat had 46 messages. My cousin who'd messaged me about forgiveness had sent, "Wait, they actually sold your car?" An uncle I'd always liked. "I had no idea. That's not okay." My mom's response, "It was a crisis situation. You don't understand the pressure we were under." More cousins, more uncles. My aunt, who had originally texted me about being the bigger person, was now very, very quiet. One of my dad's cousins, a woman in her 60s who'd always had a sharp sense of fairness, wrote, "This family has been carrying Jake for 30 years. I'm sorry this happened to you." My brother posted once, "She set us up. She knew we'd do it." That one almost got a response from me, but I let it sit, let people read it and make up their own minds. Because here's the thing about that accusation. Yes, I'd suspected. Yes, I'd made a quiet decision to protect myself. But I hadn't orchestrated anything. I hadn't planted the car like a trap and stepped back. I'd trusted them with a key, hoped to be wrong, and been proven right. The fact that I'd been careful didn't make their choice less their own. My dad eventually posted, "We're dealing with this privately as a family. This doesn't need to be aired publicly." Someone responded, "You made it public when you posted in the group chat." I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. The tide had shifted without me pushing it. Over the following months, I heard things in pieces. My brother had started therapy, which surprised me. Genuinely, I heard it from a cousin, and didn't know what to do with the information, except file it away. My parents had taken out a personal loan to cover the first few repayment installments, which meant their monthly budget was tight in a way it hadn't been before. Some relatives had quietly pulled back from them, not dramatically, not with a declaration, just the natural drift that happens when you see someone clearly for the first time. My aunt, the one who'd texted me about being the bigger person, called me about 6 weeks after the group chat. She said she wanted to apologize for getting involved without having the full story. I thanked her and meant it. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was better than I'd been in years, which was true. My parents made their first 2 repayments on time. My attorney noted it without comment. I bought a new car, a slightly newer model, same color, which was not intentional, but which made me smile every time I got in. I got a minor promotion at work in the spring. I started taking a ceramics class on Thursday nights, something I'd wanted to do for years but had kept putting off. My hands are still bad at it. I don't care. There were people who asked me if I felt guilty, if I thought I'd gone too far. If there was a version of this where I could have handled it quietly, kept it private, spared my family the public exposure. I thought about that question seriously. I always try to. Here's what I came back to. I didn't make any of this public first. I handled it through an attorney. I covered an innocent man's loss out of my own pocket. I gave my parents a structured path to make it right. When it became public because my mother chose to post in a family group chat and let 50 people form an opinion based on half the story. I just supplied the other half. I'm not interested in revenge for its own sake. I never was. What I've always wanted, was to be treated like someone whose things mattered, whose time mattered, whose boundaries were worth acknowledging. I wanted my family to look at me the way they always looked at my brother, like someone worth protecting. I didn't get that. I don't think I ever will, not from them. Not in the way I needed it when I was 10 years old, watching my brother ride a brand new bike, while I learned to live with a bent handlebar and the suggestion that it built character. But I built character anyway, just not the kind they intended. My brother is still living at my parents' place. The gambling, as far as I know, is under some kind of control. There's a support group involved, which I genuinely hope helps him. My parents are fine. Smaller budget, smaller footprint in the extended family, but fine. No one is suffering in any dramatic way. They have their house, their health, each other. I have mine. Last month, my ceramics instructor held up a small bowl I'd made and told the class it had good bones but needed more patience in the shaping. I thought about that all the way home. The good bones were always there. The patience, I'm still learning. I think that's okay. So tell me, did I do the right thing? Did I go too far or not far enough? I want to hear from you in the comments.